Eye of Storms, Stormborn Saga Book 11, written by J.T. Williams. Copyright 2019. Part 1. A Way Station. Valrin had come to understand something. He missed sailing, not just being able to control his own ship upon the high seas and the smell of salt from water crashing across the bow, but it wasn't nearly as loud. Though for the past few days they had floated above thunderstorms flashing beneath them that would have no doubt made a difficult task to sail through, the winds in the upper skies of the realm were growing in intensity. "There is a wind temple in the far northern glacial seas," Aeveam said. "I have never seen it, but the legends say that the winds of the world are birthed there. High above that place is the home of Dimn, the god of winds." Ordok and Nevron were sitting next to one another, holding their ears. "Then pray to the god and tell him to shut the winds down! This is insane," Ordok said. Aeveam covered his head, and Rossi, who had come down to eat a few bites of meat Misla had found in a storeroom, hid away. "It is quite loud," Valrin shouted up to Radahala. This was the first time they had said something to the genie, but almost instantaneously the sounds went away. They began to float at a slightly different angle and pass through some lower clouds as the afternoon sun shined directly into the interior of the ship. Radahala floated down to them and snapped his fingers. Several plates flew down onto the floor, and large bowls of rice and a spiced soup appeared. "Now that is magic I like," Nevron said. Before anyone else could move towards the plates, the dragon rider and half-orc were seated and spooning heaping servings of white rice and the spiced soup. "It is curry from the Spice Lands like the Shadowlands, but just spicy. Ha!" Radahala laughed. "You have the magic to cook food on a whim, so I'd suspect you could do like the story said. Grant wishes?" Aeveam asked. "Radahala does not work with wishes. That is a trick of the Jinn of the desert. Radahala is a holy man, a servant of the Most High Wura. I cannot act as my kin, but I can produce food if the stories are correct." "What did you do to quiet the noise?" Valrin asked. "I shut the sand cow's flaps, if you must know. You must know that sand cows are not meant to carry loads such as us, but there was engineering done to them by the ones you call Dwemhar. Most do not know, but these creatures are a mix of animal and machine, a natural machine, though. Before I was taking advantage of good winds, and thus it was not so loud but to stay at the height we are, which we must. It takes more energy than the sand cow has naturally." "So what? You feed it some rice?" Ordok said, stuffing his own face with rice and curry. "No, it is the sun. The sand cow is like a plant, drawing in the sun's rays to feed itself. But with darkness coming, we will begin to descend. But that too has been foreseen and is fine. We come upon a place that has long been hidden but will serve us well." Valrin wondered what island Radahala was speaking of. Though they had been to the east before aboard the Aela Sunrise, few mortals had explored the full expanse of the greater oceans. Aeveam stood up and went to the balcony, looking behind them. "Good. Rornuk has returned." Nevron laughed. "Good, good. Now Nura can get some food." Valrin saw Nura, a large green dragon, fly past the window and then around the sand cow. The dragons had initially been left at Raft Wreck, but just a few days ago, the two of them showed up, catching up easily with the slow-flying vessel. "Your beasts are magnificent, to be sure," Radahala said, "but annoying. I did not know they'd be following us." "Dragons are easy to train," Nevron said, "but convincing them to stay around peoples they don't know or like is substantially harder. They offer protection, to be sure. This place is like a giant target in the sky, easy for greater prey of the skies to swoop down and grab. We fly somewhere that none of us know anything about, and I, for one, feel much more comfortable with our friends here." Radahala began smoking a long pipe, floating just above a pillow in a corner of the room. "Sand cows are not blubber animals with no skill. If one was to swoop down upon us, be it a great eagle or a dragon, We are not defenseless. Wards? Magic like the Ayla sunrise? Valrin asked. No, something more. Magic has no place in the realm of technology. These creatures were engineered, not enchanted. Radahala ascended back to his space from where he piloted the sand cow. They began to descend. As the group moved toward the balcony, they saw what appeared to be buildings beneath them. We have descended fast, Milia said. We have not, Aeveam corrected her. A tall mountain, then? Nevron asked. No, I do not think so, Aeveam went on. I feel something here old. This place is Dwemhar. It is not a mountain at all. Nevron shook his head. I have been flying these skies for most of my life, and I have never seen a building in the clouds. Who could do such a thing? The Dwemhar did, Valrin said. Aside from my ship, there were Akan, flying vessels, and even Iaclo itself once flew. Eliu was no mere Dwemhar, that's for sure. So what is this place then? Milia asked. Abandoned, Aeveam told them. I sense no life here. As the sand cow descended into a courtyard, they landed upon a large flat rock. Valrin and the others exited ahead of Radahala. They were in what could be described as a small village of 6 towers. On top of one of the towers was a darkened crystal. There were high cliffs surrounding this one, but no plant life or water. The clouds around them swirled slightly on the edges of the towers, but this place was still. Ivern circled in place, looking at the towers. What is this place? A way station, Radahala said. A place between places, a place we will like for a time. We must reach the shanty village, but this is a place for a time that we will be in for a time. A nice time, time is time, yes. Okay, I get it, Evern snapped. Just quiet with your incessant words. Valrin and Aeveam laughed at one another as Evern stomped toward one of the large towers. Nevron joined him, and Ordak sniffed the air. It smells like nothing, like this place isn't even here. Yes, Valrin said. It is like time doesn't even pass us, like we could sleep here and wake up to still be within the same day. Well, that sounds ludicrous, Milia said. I've never heard of a place in the clouds. Just because you have not heard does not mean it does not exist. Have you not heard of the creatures that inhabit the deep places of the sea monsters, large and terrible? I have heard, but those are stories. Nothing I've seen with my own 2 eyes validates such a claim. You're new here, aren't you? Ordak teased. I think I would know if there were actual sea monsters. Drunk captains sometimes sprouted nonsense like that in Sealier. Well, I'm not drunk, Valrin laughed. I assure you there are sea monsters and even titans. Aeveam shook her head. Do not remind me of titans. I had pushed that from memory. We did have the Lost Fleet after that, remember? It was a well-earned ally. Lost Fleet? Milia asked. Dwemhar spirits. They fought against Rugag, a dwarf king of the glacial seas. I do know of that dwarf king. The story was he drowned at sea. Gurundothrak was all but destroyed in an accident. Drowned? Aeveam asked. That's the strangest of drownings, to be sure. I know this story, Ordak said. He drowned on blades and arrows, right? You people slew a king? Do you not worry about such acts inciting other issues? Normally, I just ignore it, Valrin said. It is my first call to protect the glacial seas. These more recent developments are a bit more personal in nature, and we're all still sorting it out. But sea monsters, dwarf kings, titans, vampires... He paused. Shadow monsters on Iaclo, Ordak said. Masked cult members, Ilera added. My mother, Aeveam said. There was a sudden silence between all of them. Valrin sighed, looking away. You wanted into the crew. We tend to run toward danger. He paused again. And we don't always all come back. Killing the Dwarf King cost the lives of 2 of the crew members. Another Fadis is still fighting the vampires in Taria, but I doubt we'll see him again in the near future, and we lost Bry just before I met you. Ilera here lost her husband that same day. Welcome to the crew." Valrin and Aeveam walked to join Evern. Ilera looked to Melia. "He hasn't been the same since that." "Well, I just never thought such things existed. He is angry, and I understand that. When I met Valrin, his only concern was getting back to his crew," Ilera said. "Now, not only has he lost part of his crew and someone he deeply loved, he lost his ship. He isn't dealing with any of this well. Not that I'd say either of us have much better to say. I know of your wife, at least what I overheard Valrin telling Yvorn. She is dead. There isn't much to say. It seems I am good company with you and the rest of the crew." Valrin rubbed his eyes as Aeveam set her hand on his back. He slapped her away. "I do not need your pity." "I'm not, but you haven't stopped since that day, even in raft wreck. Do you not think I could sense you searching the waters? I know you prayed to Meridas to send glacial sharks to you. You have them searching for her." "They search for the sword of Etha," Valrin said. "I sent them for that. I sent them to look for Marog, too. Bry is dead, I know that. I always see it, Aeveam. Always." He turned to look at Radahala as the genie floated by them. "How much longer are we here for?" "Some time. We must allow the sand cow some rest. This is a good spot, yes, a good spot." "An hour or two, then?" "No, several more hours. We shall spend the night here and begin again in the morning." Valrin went to walk away again, and Aeveam embraced him. "Thank you. You've said that before. And I'm saying it again. Thank you." Valrin embraced her back, but then released her again, turning as Evern approached with Nevron. "What did you find?" "Bones," Evern said. "This place has dead, and that is it. But even the bones are very old. I think this place has been long abandoned." Fire suddenly tore apart the ground just behind Evern. Aeveam summoned a ward, shifting it above them as Ilera and Ordak ran under it. "Where did that come from?" Valrin shouted. The ground erupts," Ordak said. The fire upon the ground fizzled out, leaving smoldering craters. Aeveam lowered her ward, pointing for the tower. "Go there! There is something above us!" Then came a blast of fire on the ground, and Valrin noticed a spark in the sky a moment before that. There was something above them. As Radahala floated slowly behind them, Valrin pushed Ilera and Melia into the tower, peering out around the brick. There was something moving in the sky, but he could not make it out. Not because it was too far away or too fast, but because he could only see a glimmer of it. It was like a ripple in the sky, visible for just a moment before it would turn from one path and go a completely different way. "That is no bird or dragon," Nevron said. The sliver passed over the structures, and several white blasts struck the top of the sand cow. Radahala moved out on his own, layering the creature with protective green spells that took several more blasts before Valrin heard the sound of chimes in the air. "And a can?" Valrin looked to Evern. "I heard it too," Evern said. "An can." "A what?" Nevron asked. "A flying vessel of the Dwemer. They have a distinct sound like a melody or musical note on the wind. It's the best way to describe it." "But there are no Dwemhar," Melia said. "Nor are there flying cities or floating islands of rock. But here we are upon one." Radahala was busy putting out the fires on the sand cow. Valrin drew his sword, stepping out from cover as the sounds of the musical chimes came again. Several blasts struck around him, and he lifted his Dwemer blade. "Come out and fight me yourself! Stop your games!" As Valrin's blade burned with Dwemhar energies, a crawling white fire that engorged his entire saber, the music stopped, and then did not come again. Whatever or whoever it was had fled, or at least left on its own. "No, no, no!" Radahala shouted. "This will take some time indeed." As the others came out from the tower, Valrin sheathed his sword. Some of the sand cow had been blasted apart. Valrin could see blood flowing out from fissures in its skin, and smoke coming from the upper portion of its head. "Is the creature damaged?" "No, it is on fire for its health. Yes, the creature is damaged. We must get to the shanty town, the island in the east, but this will not do. No, I must begin repairs. Yes, repairs right away. I cannot delay. You people, you watch the skies. Evil beasts of a creature, evil beast I say." The genie was frantic, jumping across the sand cow one leap at a time, making patches with his spells and working to comfort the beast. The sun was going down in the distance as more mists rolled over the sky tower. Ordok sighed. "Well, since we are definitely here for the night, I'll get a fire going." The dragons circled around, coming up from beneath the clouds and landing not too far from Alara and Nevron. The large form that Rornuk had now walked up and nuzzled Alara. "Perhaps the dragons could have taken down what attacked us?" Milia said. "Likely," Nevron said, "but Nura here and Rornuk were checking our lower flank. It seems they found nothing of interest and returned to us when they heard us in need. We should keep them on patrol, watching the skies from their own vantage points. But I suggest they not engage the Akan. If we can't see it, then this must be either something more advanced than even an Akan, or a spell that has not yet been revealed to us," Valrin told them. He then walked away, ignoring both Aeveam and Aeveam, who tried to stop him. He needed time away from the rest of them. He heard Aeveam say something. He assumed it had to do with him wandering off alone. He didn't care. As the sun gave way and night came upon him, he had found an area well away from the others. He was as far away as it was possible for him to get, considering the entire island was essentially where they had landed, and a small area of open ground that stretched around each of the towers. But no one had disturbed him, and for that, he was thankful. Even though they were as high as they were, he could hear Ordok's laugh, and from the scent he caught on the wind, they were cooking. Good for them. He laid with his back against the wall, his sword on his lap. He stared over a sea of clouds that outstretched before him in rolling fluffy waves, the white moonlight shining down upon them. The stars in the sky were more innumerable than even when he was upon the sea on a clear night. He didn't think there could be any more stars, but once again, he was proved wrong. Wisps of green began to appear high above him, and then came the waves of Wura's polar lights. He wiped the small number of tears from his eyes. He didn't need that weakness. He didn't need a reminder of what had broken him. He twisted open the jar containing the ashes of the warrior. He didn't need sorrow or comfort. He needed revenge, and seeing as they could not go anywhere this night, he would seek out training from the master. I wonder how this actually works. The moment he touched the ashes, he felt himself enveloped in sand, and then Trit-Nu appeared. "Valrin, this place is magnificent," he said. "It is a way station of the Dwemhar. Truly, it is beautiful. Oh, and good Wura watches over us." The spirit of Trit-Nu glowed with a soft white light. It was clear he was not a flesh and blood being, but still he wondered of the form before him. "Can the others see you?" "Yes, of course, if you wish them to, but know as of right now, you appear as if you're sleeping." He pointed behind Valrin, and Valrin noticed that his body was sleeping, and that he himself had entered the spirit realm too. "So high above everything, it is an amazing view, but I am not here to admire the scenery, but to assist you." "I must defeat Marog," Valrin said. "He's taken everything from me." "Everything? He has taken your health? He has taken your friends?" "No, but he took Bry and my ship." "Then I am confused. You say he took everything, yet he did not." He took what mattered. So the rest of them, those worried of you, don't matter? Valrin drew his sword. I seek training, not a lesson of mental well-being or whatever it is you're trying to do. I need to be better than I am. Trit-Nu drew his spear and then dropped it. Then you must understand the link between your mind and your body. If within your mind you are seeking something for a reason out of anger, your body will not flow as it should. Energies within you may give you a vigor for battle, but if your mind is cloudy, so shall be your actions in war. I could teach you how to evade, parry, slash, but if the mind isn't right, he said, tapping the temple of his head, then I have betrayed my purpose. I am to help you develop fully to reach your eventual goal. You must not push aside those closest to you, Valrin of Travah. It is not like you, and they too have lost, but keep moving forward. Valrin sheathed his sword and walked to the edge of the rock, looking out to the clouds. All I see is her face, her powers electrifying the ocean. I don't know much of death, but I wonder if her spirit is alive. Of course it is. Our physical bodies are simply that, vessels. Much like your ship, the Ayla Sunrise, our bodies are like ships for our souls, moving across the oceans of life. They are rocked, shaken, and they sometimes sink, but that within the ship remains for eternity. You cannot destroy a spirit, not without already having the power of a god within your inner soul, which dear Valrin, even the one called Marog, does not have. We in the spirit realm know of him. He is something dark and concentrated, but Marog is not a god. Trit-Nu picked up his spear. Take care of your crew and yourself. We will talk again soon. If you are of better mind, we will speak more of combat. Valrin opened his eyes, lying on the ground and looking up at the polar lights. He thought of what he had been told, of Bry and how her spirit was alive. Of course, this was something he had felt within himself, but he wondered if she was just right there, right out of reach of his physical touch. Do you frequently pass out at random? A voice asked. It was Misla. Valrin sat up. No, I don't. But I guess I did. Misla put her hands on her hips. Yes, you did. I once had a thief who would fall asleep at random, a poor thief and an even worse guard. He ended up falling asleep near a river, and we never saw him again. Valrin laughed a bit and then stood up. You came looking for me? Don't flatter yourself. I was looking for her. She pointed a distance away from Valrin to Elara, who was lying on her stomach a good distance away, across a chasm between two towers. She wandered off shortly after you. Nevron went to look for her, but I told him I'd do it. It might make more sense. I'll go, Valrin said. You already suffer enough? Misla said. And you don't? He asked, raising his brow. I'm not sure any of us are best to talk to any of the others, but it is my duty. Go with the others, assist them in preparing food and... Coffee, they're making coffee. Well, coffee then, just go. I will tend to Elara. He looked away before he started to walk away. Misla didn't say anything, but he could tell she wanted to. Valrin looked back to see her walking away. Elara wasn't the type to simply talk with anyone, and to be honest, he wasn't even sure she'd talk to him or if she just wanted to be left alone. Between the rocks, there was a narrow land bridge sticking out from the towers. He followed it, approaching her slowly from behind. She sat up almost immediately, wiping her face. Is there a problem? I decided to get away, but I will go back to the others. Her dragon, waiting motionless nearby, growled but did not raise his head. No, nothing. I just came to check on you. I'm a dragon rider, Valrin. I am fine. She was sitting cross-legged and he joined her. And I'm a captain, and I am fine. You're a poor liar, she told him. Indeed. They sat there motionless for some time, looking out at the clouds. The polar lights changing from a green to a red hue. The starlight high above seemed to dim in the brilliance of the lights. "We were planning to fly south," Aelara said. "After my training was done, we were going to fly south as far as we could, see the spires of silver." Valrin had never heard of such a place, but he continued to listen. But he had to be a hero. He had to try to kill Marog. Valrin thought back to that moment and what had happened. Marog had control of her husband. The dragon he rode shot fire across the deck of the Aela Sunrise, and in that moment, Valrin severed the beast's head. He then fought her husband, consumed by Marog. "I was there at his end," Valrin said, "when Marog had taken control of him. You know, those under the influences of the masks do many horrible things, but to be under the control of Marog's mask itself, I'm sure was something else completely." He looked at her, and she stared at him, waiting for whatever it was he was going to say to make this all better. "He fought back, Aelara. He fought the mask and won, but he knew you were already down, and he attempted to destroy the mask that was upon his face." "He knew about masks." Aelara smiled. "He wore a good one every time I had a trial with Roanoke. He always acted like he was indifferent, like he didn't just want to grab me from my mount. He had seen so many riders die that I know he didn't want me to have that life, but I couldn't bear to see him fly off to war without being there next to him." Tears fell from her eyes. "But I didn't think it'd end like it did. I had thought we'd fight shadow elves until we were older, root out dungeons of spiders, something else. There haven't been wars in some time. When I was caught on that damn island, I knew I'd escape. I just had to do it. But then everything that happened after, our home being overran by some usurper. King Nevron is a good man. He is fair. He fights alongside his people. I never meant for all this to happen." Roanoke clawed closer, nuzzling her with his snout. She petted him and shivered, curling into his grasp. Valrin knelt to her. "Thank you for continuing to fight. You will avenge your husband. You will be there when we throw down Marog. Our blades together, we will kill him." She smiled, snuggling up against Roanoke. He stood up and went to return to the others. As he walked around the edge of the tower, he saw a small fire they had built beneath the sand cow. Radahala was puffing on his pipe, and each of them was holding mugs of coffee. Aeveam was off to the side, meditating, and Nevron was smoking a pipe with Avurn. No one said anything as he approached, but Melia offered him coffee. "It's got no cinnamon," Ordak stated. "Come now, Orc, you're obsessed with the cinnamon." Nevron laughed. "You're the one who started me on that and the wine." "Yes, the wine," Nevron smiled. Yes, that is something I wish we had here." "I'm confused," Avern said. "Were you captured or having some kind of party with the king here?" Nevron laughed. "A bit of both. Definitely a bit of both. Thankfully, all things will be made right in time. I've already decided it. No Dragon King will be thrown out of his kingdom so lightly. In time, I will directly deal with that which has taken my people. Agents of Misla," he spat. "We do not have time for such nonsense. Back in my younger years, I heard of you. You flew directly into Eliadel in the Shadowlands and challenged 3 Targ to one-on-one combat. The most insane of propositions. You were a scourge to our people from my point of view." Nevron lifted his head high, showing his pronounced chin. "I challenged one to combat. The other 2 jumped in. I killed one and maimed the other 2. I do believe that was the last time any threats came my way." Avern nodded. "Yes, even the assassins couldn't reach you. Quite a few, to be sure. Normally, it is us of the Shadowlands who can hide in the shadows." Nevron took a long draw from his pipe and then pointed. "And that's the difference. I wasn't hiding. You knew where I was." "Dwemhar woman," Radahala said, "your mind is not here and now. It is searching. Why do you claim to be meditating when it is much more?" The genie's sudden claim not only threw Aeveam out of her medication, but caused the rest of them to look at her. She opened her eyes, staring at Valrin. "Something we search for is closer, much closer than the shanty village. There is a temple, a wind temple. It is not too far away. "We must keep to the plan," Radahala said. "It is very important." His voice was shallow and strong, not playful as was his normal tone. "If one is closer, we should claim it. It would make sense," Ordak said. "We can't leave yet," Milia said. "Yes, we can," Nevron corrected. "The dragons, we could go there now if the path is safe." Aeveam's eyes glowed white. "The path around the temple is safe, but there is something else. The air around us is tumultuous. I have searched the path we took to get her. I have felt the life forces of the dragons still guarding Raftwreck all the way to the edge of the clouds around us. There is something is coming." Part 2. The Lone Voyager. Valrin realized that Aeveam was not talking theoretically. There was a whistle in the dark clouds above them. Something moved through the cloud cover and down the opposite side of the towers. Before Valrin could say anything, he heard Rornuk roar. Nevron jumped to his own dragon, Nura, mounting it. Rornuk rose into the clouds, flapping wildly. Ilera was on his back. A blast of blue fire lit up the clouds. "Come now, fly!" Nevron shouted at Nura. The dragon was smaller, much different from Ilera's, especially with Nevron, who was no small man atop him. He was airborne, moving with haste as a glimpse of Ilera appeared in the clouds now opposite where they had last seen the shape. Another blast of blue, and then a few moments later, red flames lit up the clouds. Then, silence. "We must take to the air," Milia said. "No," Evern said. "If the dragons cannot catch it, we should not give it another possible target, especially since it already attacked us once." He looked at Radahala. "What is this? You brought us to this lone isle, yet you do not know what pursues us." "Radahala does not know," he said. "There is much that moves in the mists of Misla. I cannot know everything. I will tend to the sand cow." As the genie began floating up and down around the creature's upper portion, Evern and Valrin stood by one another. "I did not hear the sounds like before," Evern said. "Neither did I," Valrin said. "It may not be the same one as before. But if the dragons struggle to catch it, it must be fast." "It may not be so much machine as spirit," Aeveam suggested. "What do you mean?" Valrin asked. She rocked her head side to side. "I believe it to be a machine of some kind, but its spirit is stronger than I'd suspect of any living creature." Ilera and Nevron returned, their dragons breathing heavily and forcefully, the chase having worn them down significantly. "Damn bastard," Nevron said. "What was it?" Milia asked. "Something I've never seen before. It moved like a blade through the clouds, near invisible. The fogs around it seemed to grow outward every time it slowed down." "So, the fog surrounded it?" Evern asked. "No, more like it was leading or creating the fogs. This was not like the thing before. This was sleeker, like an arrow through the sky." "We didn't hear any musical notes," Ilera told Valrin. "Whatever this was, it was causing the fogs. The only ally we seemed to have was the wind itself. Every time we turned into the headwinds, it slowed slightly. But of course, so did we. It was the only moment we could see it." "Then perhaps we have another reason to go to the temple Aeveam spoke of," Valrin said. "He isn't going to like that," Evern said, motioning to Radahala. Valrin shrugged. "He'll live." Radahala flew down and around the sand cow as Valrin walked ahead of the rest. "Genie, there is something not quite right about what is going on. You want to go one place. I say we go to another." Radahala did not speak at first, though Valrin was unsure if it was because he couldn't hear him or something else. "Genie," Valrin said, "do you hear me or ignore me? I'd point out to you that you're a saint of the god Wura, not our master. We deem the wind temple that Aeveam has sensed to be of more importance, considering there is something in the clouds and winds that does not seem benevolent." Thunder rolled around them, and the fogs were pushed away by ever-growing dark clouds. Radahala floated down to Valrin. "I hear you, Stormborn, but know there are many paths that we may have to take, and I have chosen one I think best. You cannot possibly see all roads." "Neither can you," Misla said. "You are but a saint, not a god yourself, even if you are a genie." "I have seen our path as it is, and much like the gods," Aeveam said. "It isn't clear but murky, veiled. Misla is bigger than just this lost captain you speak of." "I worked to get you to your ship," Radahala said. "I was not ready to go to the Temple of the Winds. The winds are too turbulent." "Then go higher," Nevron said. "The winds in the upper sky are not like those in the middle sky in which you have been flying. The air can be thinner, but it will be worth it." "So why do I not just give you complete control of the sand cow, yes?" Radahala said, his tone annoyed. "I can just stay here and not be the faithful guide. Yes? You think you know better?" "Why would we not go to the closer place?" Valrin questioned. "We can go to that place if you really wish, but know that I'm not responsible for any of this." His words were strange and erratic, nothing like what Valrin had heard the genie say before. There was a hesitant way Radahala moved about now, almost as if he were afraid of his own shadow, or of something in the shadows that none of the others could see. They boarded the sand cow without further words. Nevron and Alera both took to the sky on their dragons, making many passes over them as the sand cow slowly moved up and off the way station. Valrin stood with Aeveam, cross-armed and staring at the buildings sinking beneath them as Radahala took them up as they commanded. The winds shifted, moving around them in an erratic way. The sand cow shook and made strange gaseous explosions off the side of itself. Valrin gripped a handle on the balcony and looked up toward the head of the beast. Radahala was meditating. The sand cow pushed through the clouds and deeper into the atmosphere. The air became much warmer, and Valrin felt a whoosh of air shoot up the side of the sand cow. A dragon roared, and another roared in response. There was a blast of fire somewhere above them. Aeveam ran to the edge, looking up. They engaged the strange one. 2 more snaps shot up over the balcony. They couldn't see anything in the clouds, and the sand cow was only slowly drifting up. Another roar split the air, and the haze began to clear. As they pushed through the cloud cover, a bright sun greeted them over the sea of clouds that went off in all directions. There was a shimmer of silver beneath them, moving quickly at the cloud level. Valrin saw it for just a moment, and then it was gone. A few seconds later came both Elera and Nevron, their dragons flapping wildly to get up to the sand cow. As they came up to the balcony, Valrin noticed that they were both uninjured for now. At least it seemed as such. "We saw it," Elera said. "A slender blade cutting through the air faster than any dragon or other flying beast." "Is it a creature?" Misla asked. "Sounds like a spell," Ordak said. "No, neither," Nevron said, looking now at Valrin. "And it wasn't the Akan you mentioned before. No melody in the air or spinning crystals, just sleek metal. I do not believe this even has a rider. It is enchanted, if I had to guess. Nura blasted it, and the dragon fire did nothing." "Then it is something of Misla," Valrin said. "Perhaps this wind temple will reveal more of the secrets that are yet hidden to us." Valrin found it strange that Radahala did not come from the piloting position of the sand cow. In fact, he was still meditating. Valrin could feel his heart thudding in his chest, and at a much heavier rate than normal. As the others made a point to rest, he was left standing near the balcony's edge. It wasn't that he minded, but it reminded him of how unnatural things were for him. He hadn't truly slept in some time. Sleeping was supposed to happen when his ship was in port, and it could take many days to weeks for him to recover, but he had no ship in which to take to port. He felt empty, like an empty bottle of wine, but worse. He felt cracked. There wasn't much to say beyond this, and if asked, Valrin was sure he'd answer he was fine. That was the best answer for when he truly wasn't fine. The sand cow began to descend, and Valrin slumped down against the railings of the balcony. Nevron still made passes as they began downward, moving through a patch of clouds toward the sea sparkling far below. Ilera and Rornik were just beside the sand cow. She half smiled as she shot down underneath him. The air was suddenly frigid, so much in fact that Ordak stood up abruptly from his sleeping position and coughed. "Damn cold. Where are we?" It was snowing outside. Valrin looked up at Radahala as the winds began to gust through the sand cow. The genie was no longer meditating. Suddenly, the windows to the outside were sealed by layering flesh and metal. The gusts caused the sand cow to rattle, and they began to drop faster. Valrin pulled himself up toward Radahala. Snow was coming down in heavy amounts, and as the sand cow dropped further again, Radahala looked to him. "Misla does not affect that which is here," he told Valrin. "We go to a place in the far north of the glacial seas that is as it should be, cold and icy. Brace yourself, the sand cow is in shock. It cannot control itself." The sand cow moaned, and Valrin pulled himself down toward where everyone else was. He felt his stomach churning, and his body was freezing, but he had begun to sweat. "The sand cow is in shock from the cold. We'll be landing rough." "Good," Ordak said. "It's not like we haven't had a rough landing before. At least I'm not about to get shot with magic like last time." Ordak began to laugh exuberantly as the sand cow made several more pitches and shook violently. After a gaseous release from the creature, they began to descend faster. There was a small moment of peace, and then a loud thud and scraping before a sudden stop. Valrin and the others were thrown around, rolling into one another, with Ordak ending up on top of Melia, and Aeveam pushing herself up off the ground and scurrying to get out of a broken portion of the sand cow. Valrin followed her, pushing through the torn flesh of the creature and feeling a snap of cold air as he pushed himself out. He looked around at an icy plain and a tall black mountain with large horns of silver built into the rock. The snow came down in droves, and there were many seabirds roosting on the crags of rock surrounded by swirling black water. In the distance was a wall of clouds, pushed back, almost as if a ward were around this part of the ocean and blocking the clouds and warm air. Ilera and Rornik descended beside them, rushing over to the crashed sand cow. "We hit that cold air, and you all dropped!" Ilera shouted. Though she was clearly distraught, expecting worse than it was, she quickly calmed down seeing the others climb out of the sand cow. Radahala was casting some type of yellow magic over the creature. "The winds were too much," he muttered to himself. "Too much. I said it then. I'll say it now. Too much. Way too much." "Where are we exactly?" Ordak asked. "Exactly? You want exact coordinates to where we fell out of the sky?" Melia asked him. "We're north, far north," Aeveam said. "This place is related to the Stormborn, an offshoot of another place, a palace of a god." "We're near a god?" Avern asked. "Dimn. I feel his presence in the air. The horns you see in the mountains, they are part of a greater place, a temple complex that stretches many miles over the ocean. Dimn is high upon a mountain of the north, a place I read about during my time in Suia. This is a place that feels the same." "That is because it is as you speak," a voice said starkly and out of nowhere. Somehow, a female figure had approached them without them knowing, and now stood upon the sand cow. Radahala was speechless, and as he stuttered to speak, she lifted her hand. "Silence, one of Wura. You are alive only because of my will. I have destroyed much that has come near my temple. I am a saint of Dimn, a guardian of the horns of the gods, and a wind purist. How did you find this place?" "Me?" Aeveam said. "I saw this place upon our path. We are seeking that of the lost captain. I saw this place in my mind." "Then you are as a Dwemhar, but you know of Dimm's temples?" I trained at Swea, Aeveam said. A time ago now it seems, but it was my home. We are the crew of the Aela Sunrise, she said. I am Laroa, Saint of Dimn, as I stated before. I have watched this place for many ages. Valrin noticed she floated just above the ground as she made her way toward the rest of them, scanning each of them. You are a crew of a ship, yet I do not see your ship. You instead have a sandcow of Iclo, yet I know Iclo is no more. I am the captain of the Aela Sunrise, Valrin said. My ship was stolen by Marog, an entity of evil from a time ago, the ill workings of Iliu of the Dwemhar. Laroa stopped at Ordak and cocked her head. Strange, you are an orc? Half, he said. Indeed. I fought against the orcs with the high elves of Taria. I did not believe any survived. Shadowlands, he said. Oh yes, the winds that wrap around from there smell of sulfur and blood, a deadly place to be sure. I'd imagine there are many foul things there. There are, I'm sure, Valrin said, shivering. And of that we can talk about more, perhaps somewhere warmer. Laroa smiled. I forgot. I do not feel the cold as you do. I sense only ill winds or good winds. Ill winds surround, and I yet hold good winds here. But there is another who has followed you, but I am not yet sure of their dealings. Misla is upon one of my temples east of here. It is a strange coincidence that you come here at the same time. Yes, all of you should follow me, and I'll see to your comforts, as much comfort as an old elven saint can provide. Radahala did not go with them. Valrin waited for the genie, who was busy tending to the sand cow, but even though he looked up many times, he refused to acknowledge Valrin. Come on, Aeveam said, being the only person who had waited with him, and noticed he was not following. It's strange, Valrin said. Very strange. He's not been normal by any measure of the word beyond aiding us initially. He doesn't seem anything like himself to start with right now, Valrin said. Aeveam shrugged. He has barely been involved with any of us until suddenly he was. He provided raft wreck but was then barely there. Furthermore, he was using Melia to save others, but yet with the coming of the mists and the changes in the air, we were no closer to our goal of getting the Aela Sunrise back than we were when we got started, yet he is supposedly working with us. Whatever he desires is along the same road as us, but perhaps it isn't the same destination. I sense we will find what we seek here, and there will be more reason than that alone to come here. But with that, I wonder what else is at work. Do you think he is evil? Valrin questioned. Aeveam took a moment to answer. Asking if someone is evil is beyond simply seeing a dark form with hate within their heart. Evil slips into one when they believe they're doing good, when their intentions are pure, when their fears are present. I hate the belief of pure good and pure evil because there is neither in most cases. Even my mother, though not in the form she was in the end, my mother knew well. One day, I hope to learn her secret. Her secret? Valrin asked. Laroa was leading them far from the sand cow and to a stairwell that they couldn't see from where they had crashed. The stairwell snaked up the side of the mountain beside one of the great silver horns. Though Aeveam and Valrin were a good deal behind the rest, their pace did not slow to wait for them. By her secret, I mean what caused her to desire what she did, to take the path she took. Rarely does anyone simply desire darkness. You desire darkness to fight for some form of light you see with your own eyes, like a fire seeking dry wood over wet. Would the fire not burn the easiest kindling? Yes, but that may lead it to wet wood and its extinguishing. My mother had a path of her own, and though I love my father for protecting me, I wonder of what she saw in the future. What fear did she have to cause her to lash out like she did? I sense dishonesty in Radahala, but I do not see the full picture. Captain, she paused, know that I'm trying. I won't fail again. You didn't fail, Aeveam? I did, Valrin, I did. I failed when we were on Iaclo, allowed myself to get taken. I spent years training at Suia, learning how to focus my mind and keep that which consumed me on that horrid island at bay. I was always a risk. My father perhaps should have drowned me in the glacial seas instead of trying to save me. I haven't done much good for anyone, not even you. Valrin wasn't sure what to think of her. Not that he was one to normally calm down Aeveam, but more so, Aeveam normally wasn't like this. "We've all made mistakes," he told her. "We could all be better in some form. It's what keeps us the heroes in our lives, not believing we are the greatest or best, but the worst. We move forward. We defeat what we must. We keep pushing. That's what Bry would want." The mention of Bry again was difficult for the both of them. The others were ahead and had stopped. To their left, Valrin could see the silver horn built into the rock of the mountain. Now, the path before them led between the two horns and into a white wall and a gold gateway. "You have caught up," Laroa said. "Good. Radahala will remain outside the temple. Though he is a saint of Wura, he is not welcome here. It is such as it must be, as I have decreed, in the name of Dimn. But you, crew of the Ayla Sunrise, you are to be welcome here. Dragon riders, let your beasts fly free here, for they cannot enter the temple itself, but they may find places to rest in the rocks. Thousands of birds have come here and live peacefully for a time. The sea is no friend to living creatures in this region, and I have made a place for the ones who could get here." Elara and Nevron motioned for their dragons to fly, and both beasts took to the sky, leaping off the pathway and gliding down to the oceans beneath them. Valrin hadn't realized how high up they were. In his conversations with Aeveam, they had come up many levels, and now even the sand cow in the distance looked tiny. "Do not worry of him," Laroa said, touching him on the shoulder. "Some saints are upon the world as lower pieces, while others hold more of a place." She looked to Aeveam. "You may find solace ahead. Take the stairwell up to Moon Tower and mediate. The others will see the meal I have provided, but you need food of a different source." Aeveam bowed and continued on. Valrin looked at the saint. "You separate me for a reason?" "I do. Walk with me. We will ascend another way. We must speak privately." Though they passed through the same gold gateway as did the others, Valrin and the saint moved down a narrow walkway adorned with glowing red flowers, with tiny icy hummingbirds zipping across their path. She led him up a stairwell and to an overlook from which they could see the ocean and the horizon. "I have long wondered if I'd meet you," she said. "Now that I have, know that I have mourned your path, for I know its end. I'm not much for ends, but all of us have ends, even saints." She nodded. "It is true, but yours comes sooner than mine. But again, I'm an elf, so that is to be expected." "What did you want?" Valrin asked. "I'm not a fan of long conversations about life and death. I've seen a bit too much as of recent of the latter." "I know. Her sacrifice was felt even here." "I don't want to talk about her." Laroa nodded. "Yet she's all that fills your mind." "My enemy is Marog. That is who I seek. That is why we followed what Radahala told us, to seek the items of the lost captain." "So you have come here to claim the Eye of Storms?" "I don't know. We came here because Aeveam said it made more sense than to go where Radahala would have us go. Plus, there was a strange magic in the skies, a flying vessel. I believe there is more going on than he tells us. In fact, I know there is." The lost captain was one of the few to visit Misla in its other realm, but now we fear it coming to our own. That is the mists, the warmth that warms the oceans and veils the skies. It is why the oceans churn and shift. Monsters rise up, and upon their backs is Misla, a place that wasn't but yet became. "What is Misla?" "A place of Marog, an abomination of a place that was great but, too, became evil. He needed your vessel to sort out his own issues within the city. He did not have the mental capacity to discern a solution, so he had to use that of Elia. You mean Ayeklo? You mean that Misla is a version of Ayeklo? Misla twists the weather, disrupts our world, for it should not be in our world, Valrin. You are the Stormborn of the glacial seas. Your charge is to protect these oceans, yet it is understood that you caused this evil in your quest to save Aeveam. Aeveam had to be saved. I would not let her get turned into the scourge siren. Aeveam should not have lived. Her fate was to die, but now the gods see a new fate for her, a different fate. Of that I cannot say, for I do not know the inner workings of the gods, but know I am to be but the old woman of the seas. Though I look fair in age and health, I use much of my power to preserve this place. I am failing. I will give you all I can to support your goals, but know there isn't much I can do to stop what is coming. There was a long silence between the two of them. Valrin watched as her flowing golden hair and fair skin faded. Her body had gaping holes within her arms and legs. Her dress was ragged and torn, and her hair was falling out of her head. Dimn has blessed me, she said. This is my form without blessing, without my magic as a saint. The vileness of Marog causes a shift in the winds of the world. The gods moan at the sight of that which comes, for it never should have been. Your fate remains. You must destroy that which you created, and already your fate has struck you in a way you do not yet understand. Radahala leads you right and wrong. Your actions could lead you toward righteousness or calamity. Either is a fair chance. Her image returned to the young woman she was before. Her voice became as a melody again. You must embrace your role in what is to come. Others will act, succeed, and fail. All the while, your final confrontation will be tied to what path you sailed before now. I give you but rest, she said with a smile. That is more than others can give you now. The crew needs it, he told her. But I do not mean them. You are bound to the realm ship of the Dwemhar. When it is at port, you can rest, but when not, you cannot. Though you may act as if you are asleep, you can never truly rest. But I do not pull you away from the others to talk of sleep. You have malice within you. The gods have sensed it. I can sense it. You are not yourself, and though you may not know it now, you will soon. Your path is already skewed. Your faith is broken. Nothing is as it was. Since you went upon Ayeklo, and then later when Marog came upon the world, she paused. From within, you have changed. You do not go through what I did and not change. The darkness is within you. Just behind that smile, you give your crew that all is well. Just behind the forward-thinking thoughts you have. Will you not pray at the altar of Dimn? Release your struggles. Then I can give you rest, and you will be restored. Valrin looked out toward the ocean, the rippling waves of white foam around the towering rocks that were like spikes sticking out from the water. It drives me, he told her. It feeds my inner energies and helps me to focus. He looked down and then back to her. I will rest when Maro falls. I do not have time to reflect on what has happened. I must act. It was my meekness before that doomed those around me. I wasn't good enough to do what was needed, but I will not fall away again. I will push forward. She bowed to him. I have offered the Stormborn rest, Meridas. He cannot be helped. She turned, leaving him at the ledge. Come into the temple when you are ready, and you'll see I have provided as the gods have requested. I will trouble you no more. As she departed, Valrin sighed, looking back out at the ocean. I know I'm doing what I must. To rest is to give up. I do not give up. I will not. I will honor the gods, embrace my task as Stormborn, and sacrifice whatever I must in order to reach my goals. Truly? The voice was sudden, not what he expected, and was so real he thought it was spoken by someone standing next to him. Truly, you embrace your task as Stormborn, but are you truly willing to sacrifice whatever you must? He knew the voice. It was Trit-Nu. He took the jar in hand with the ashes of the elf saint and opened it. As he dumped some of the ashes out, he was transported to the realm of the warrior's spirit. They were upon the same rocky island as before, and this time Trit-Nu held his spear in hand. You talk with the certainty of a man many times your age, yet I see nothing in your actions or mind that says you can hold up to the standard you prescribe for yourself. I will not falter, Valrin said. Just as I told that saint, I'll tell you, what drives me is something within, a force I've not felt before, but my resolve has never been stronger. How strong was it when you sailed your ship against multiple vessels, not only losing a gift of the Dwemhar, but also risking the lives of the dragon rider and the half-orc? Was your mad fury enough? Or did you fail? Valrin drew his sword. Are you not here to teach me, Saint? Or do you choose to berate me like the others? Why are you angry? He asked. I'm not. You're fellow Saint and you seem to have a penchant for angering me. I'm fine. Are you? He spun his spear, lunging forward. Valrin parried it to the side and pushed forward, spinning into the elf. Trit-Nu vaulted on the spear and stood on its back end, the spear point in the ground. You are still slow, ill-equipped. What, no more words of wise talk from the one who didn't know they were dead? You are still slow, Valrin. Why do you seek to continue this senseless exchange of words? Your mind is made up. You are strong in your compassion and drive. If that is so, and I'm simply dead, you should have no issue defeating me. Valrin held up his sword. Charging forward, he hacked left and right, feinting in an attempt to draw an attack from Trit-Nu. But the elf was toying with him, hopping about on his spear just out of reach of the Stormborn. Valrin held his blade behind him. Haken Rak! He shouted. Lightning bent around him, striking Trit-Nu's spear and throwing him off balance. Valrin lunged forward, nearly striking him, but being parried just before his blade slashed Trit-Nu's face. The elf recoiled, striking Valrin across the head with the wooden hilt. He staggered back, his head pounding. You expect to defeat Marog, yet you cannot lay a touch on a dead elf? It's different. You're a spirit. You have powers he does not. You're not actually here. You're a ghost. Trit-Nu dropped his spear, holding up his hands as his form began to dissipate. What have you done, Valrin? Valrin thought it was some type of trick. He held up his sword, moving slowly in a circle around his foe. You were given a gift in me, yet you act as if I'm nothing. I'm fading from this realm. What have you done? Trit-Nu's face began to wither, falling away like dust from the spectral form. The winds picked up around them, and the rocky island quaked. What have you done? Trit-Nu had nearly completely vanished, and in a gust of wind he was gone. Valrin stood alone, his breathing heavy. Trit-Nu! He shouted. But there was no answer. The only sound he could hear was the water splashing up around the rocky island. What did I do? He said aloud, but to himself. Suddenly he was struck in the side. He stumbled, his ribs aching, spinning around. Another strike hit his back. He swung his sword backward, but mid-swing, something else struck him behind his knee, knocking him down. He struck the rock with his face and felt a presence around him. Strike! 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 He felt several punches to his center back. He rolled over onto his back with his hands up, but no one was there. Something struck his face, rolling him onto his stomach, and his neck cracked. He couldn't move, but he could see. He saw Trit-Nu appear before him. Fairly good fighting for a dead thing. Valrin, you're going to get yourself killed. Besides, who has ever said it will just be Marog you face? Part 3. Lessons. Valrin felt himself suddenly bound from his hands down to his feet. The rocky island with the storm around them faded away. Was this a deeper vision? An altered dream state? "It is neither," Trit-Nu said. "My purpose is to take you from the weak captain you are and make you into something more. I must tell you that I have not been forthcoming with all I know. That Misla, I knew her. I knew her before I died. To think that one fateful meeting would lead to so much more in my own life was something I could have never expected. I wanted to return home, to the Shadowlands. If you think a pale elf, one such as me of high elf lineage, is common in the Shadowlands, you'd be wrong. Your path was meant to be longer, but it will be cut short. You were to be the vessel that carried the hope of the Dwemhar forward. But now there is darkness coming. Truly I prepare you for what was meant to be, while knowing that it has changed. That you will see before your time seeking that of the lost captain is complete. Once I was a high elf saint, loyal to Wura, yes, but now I have seen more, and I must guide you. I sense all even if you are not within my realm. I heard to words of rest the saint offered you that you refused. If you will not rest, you will train." Valrin could move again. Now upon his arms and legs were thick hide armors. He wore a helm of bone. Around them were mountains and fire. "Where am I?" Trit-Nu landed in front of him. "Upon the grounds of Kel, war god of the north. I have much to teach you. You first held a sword while under Edenos, a curved saber to mimic the captain you wish to be. Edenos was a proud man but kind. The gods favored him, and in the end he fell. You are favored as well, but you must survive until your time is Stormborn. Misla comes, and with it comes destruction, an end that angers the gods of the north, for it is not to come." Trit-Nu brandished 2 wooden sticks, spinning them in front of Valrin. Valrin drew his Dwemhar saber. "You were blessed with a weapon of your ancestors, yet you would not last against one in open combat. You must defend as I teach you more, and then your trial shall begin." Trit-Nu jumped at him with both sticks, swinging them down simultaneously. Valrin jumped to the right, catching one of the 2 sticks, the closer one, in a parry. But Trit-Nu was quick to spin toward him, kicking him across the black sand of their arena in the strange place Valrin had been brought. "Once, you were within the woods of Urlas. Beneath those hallowed boughs, there is a training ground not too unlike the sands you see here. There, a warrior trains, a savior of your people, one that is to awaken the old ways. A time ago you fought him, but it was a passing thing." Trit-Nu charged, but Valrin jumped to throw him off. Valrin brought his blade down in several deep slashes, attempting to push back Trit-Nu and sliding in the sand as he overstepped. "That fate," Trit-Nu continued, "was meant to be for you as well, but as it has been seen by those with foresight, it shall not be now. As living beings, we are only given so much in the form of mortality. Your life force is like a fleeting smoke, fueled by fire and fresh wood. But to understand this, you must understand that a life of risks and a life of comfort have risks of their own. The war captain who fights every battle and avoids stray arrows may seem more in mortal risk, but in truth, the same could be said of the one who sits in opulence, eating their fill. Though their deaths will likely be different, they will die nonetheless. As a fire, you must burn more now to reverse what has been done in the world. Your fate has been altered, and in such, your death comes." "Death does not work like you say," Valrin shouted, moving with vigor across the battlefield. "Death is a cruel captain. Coming upon those who would otherwise continue giving life to the world, death is an enemy. You would say such, but I have done more in death than I did in life. Death is but a path we take. Our spirit lives on. Spirits do not die. You will remain you even in death. You will see." Trit-Nu brought both of his sticks down hard on Valrin's sword, shattering them. He retreated to his spear, standing high upon a rock above them. I have died 1,000 deaths in my quest to see as I should, to be a guide for wayward warriors. I am of the realm of the gods now, a teacher, a master, one beyond the ash that you have within the vial on your belt. That is not my ash, but the ash of the gods, capable of much, but in the focus you have, it reaches me. You seek to defeat Marog, but you must understand that everything he is should not have been created. Elio tried to separate the evil from his mind, and in turn gave his own dark thoughts and actions sentience. That is the folly of the Dwemhar. One must seek mantras of balance, not complete separation. We cannot be wholly good in our time as living beings. Only can we strive to be good, put thought in being good. Darkness is a part of you as it is all of us, but at how and what you feed your thoughts that forms your mind and becomes your reality. The ground around Valrin shifted from sands to grass. He was suddenly above the dark mountains that now glistened with snow. The glacial seas roared around him. He felt light, refreshed, and then a storm began to surround him. Close your eyes, and I will come upon your aura so you may feel what you need. I shall teach you what Aeveam was taught to quell her own dark desires, but you must hold it closer than even she, for even with her potency she failed to resist. You must not fail. Sea star bright upon the night, icy cold the ocean's blight. Darkness upon black stone isle, let not thoughts of ill defile. Hamrasu, Hamrasu, light and dark, be one, not two. Trit-Nu came upon Valrin, and Valrin felt an intense warmness across his entire body. He felt energy running from his feet up through his core, toward his center chest, his throat, and finally, his forehead. He closed his eyes and then opened them again, seeing a bright light as Trit-Nu appeared before him. You have the gift of Hamrasu, the next word of power you must embrace. Now you must learn to use the mantra you have been taught. I have opened the way for you to channel this. You must take the action to learn it further. Valrin's high place above the glacial seas faded away, and he was once again surrounded by the mountains of shadow and standing within the ash of the place he was before. Trit-Nu had vanished. Fire erupted around the mountaintops surrounding him. He could feel the vibrations of many thuds beneath his feet. He held out his sword, turning every few moments to try to catch sight of what approached. Smoke rolled over him and he could no longer see, yet he could breathe as normal. It has been a long time since one has come here. The words were coarse, like a raspy old woman's voice, taunting in tone and causing a shiver to run down his back. She was nowhere yet everywhere, a blackness moving through the smoke that he could more feel than actually see. The many thuds thundering on the ground had stopped. My children and I are great teachers of the god Kel. We have trained many to resist the draw of the Itsu, but never one like you. I have been told to be reserved in my attacks. I think this is why the gods are so troubled. Too few good warriors of the gods now, but alas, that is not my place to judge, for I am a simple teacher. Enough talk! Valrin shouted. He swung his sword in the smoke, and the burning flames of the Dwemhar blade cut through the shadows, which receded and allowed him through. He pushed forward, swinging in a continued cross partially, to move forward but also to search for his enemy. You have been taught Hamrasu. That is what weapon you must wield. No blade can harm me, not even that one of sacred forging. Valrin felt multiple hands grab him. The forms around him appeared as beings with curved fangs, their claws sharp and their stench like ash. They opened their mouths, and it was like they were weeping. He thought of the words, Hamrasu. His mind was pulled from the thoughts, and he fell back to his sword, slashing downward. The hands released him, and the smokes receded. No, the voice said. Suddenly, he saw a figure of many tendrils floating above the ash. Upon each tendril were one of the creatures he had seen, but as more of the smoke cleared, he saw there were literally hundreds. I am Vakkelna, being of the abyss. I am the devastator of Kel. I am kept as a pawn of the god, kept from the world until my time. I have seen battle with the Itsu. I have fought the high elves in the time of the moon's bloodwake, when those in the Taria regions made war with the Rusis of the Keva Mountains. I am cursed yet blessed. You must not use a physical blade against me. I have ceased our training for the moment. If it weren't for the will of Kel, you'd already be destroyed. I am quite hungry, and I have many mouths to feed. Her tendrils snapped around him, their demonic ends snapping at him. The smoke returned, and he sheathed his sword, though he had a stronger desire not to. The hands began to grip him, and he closed his eyes, feeling his arms pulled to the side and his legs pulled outward. He imagined his breath coming into his chest, expanding, and then propelled out. He could feel his body from his fingertips to his toes. He felt energy flowing up from his lower stomach to his center chest, and then, like a snake, crawling up his spine, up into his face and the center of his head. The words, he thought. Hamrasu. Nothing happened. Hamrasu. This was nothing like the other word of power. It was not something he could channel from the outside and wield like a weapon to smite his enemy. He focused on his inner self, and then said the words again. Hamrasu. Vakkelna tore at his flesh. He could feel the claws of her minions. He tried again, feeling a warmness that pushed out from his core and forced the grasp of many of the minions, but then he felt cold. Darkness gripped his mind. He saw the image of a masked man and felt the presence of Marog. Vakkelna dropped him on the ashy ground. He could hear talking in the distance, but as he pushed himself up, he saw only the black mountains and the fires burning high upon their peaks. You do not yet use the skill to any level of mastery. It was Trit-Nu. I just learned it. What do you expect? I expect that a low-level binding spell by Vakkelna would be easily thwarted by one who seeks to face a being such as Marog. She is of the gods. She is one of the pet monsters. Oh, Trit-Nu said, shaking his head. Do not let her hear you say that. Vakkelna is an old being, an old ancient, as they call them. A warrior of Kel like none other, and a true scourge to my people. Her name and her image are stricken from the histories, and you would find few who would even speak of the horror of Vakkelna. She is holding back, and you must learn to use this ability. Valrin nodded. Well, I should get back to my crew. It has been some time, and it will take more time for me to master this skill in any form. Trit-Nu shook his head. Time does not move as you experience here. Time has barely passed where you left your shell. You will continue with me. We must go to the fountain. Though Valrin assumed this place would just shift as needed, like some type of training ground for the soul, it seemed that now he and Trit-Nu were to travel down an actual road that led from the Valley of Black Sand where he was into another region. This is the realm of Kel? Valrin asked. Yes, Trit-Nu said. It is. A bit calmer than I thought, for a war god and all. Thunder shook the ground, and the sky flashed red and white. There were more violent quakes, as it seemed like metal clashed upon metal. Ignore that last bit I said. I must have angered him. Trit-Nu laughed. Oh, that is not Kel but Throka, god of the dwarves. His realm is partially in that of Kel's. It is them too who craft the weapons of the saints and the gods, at least when they once made weapons as gods. That was a time a while ago. They began up a mountain road. There was a tall black tower with a large orb atop it in the distance. I don't get it. You speak of times long ago and dying many times, yet you were alive for Misla at Iaclo. It cannot be both. I am but one form of many, a face for you to speak to while being the soul of many. I in my many faces have seen what I have claimed to see. I have trained warriors through the ages. In truth, Trit-Nu has become another one of my names. I am a partial god, a warrior once upon the world in the form of many souls, a hero in my own time that takes the wisdom of others to pass it down. Though, in my form, I am limited. I cannot appear in any way that you have not seen, so therefore you see me as Trit-Nu. For another, I would appear differently. The gods have only called mortals to train here in times of great duress. This is one of those times. Where are the gods? Where is Kel? Kel is wherever he wishes to be, Trit-Nu said. If he graces us with his presence, wonderful. If not, wonderful. He's not the nicest. So, the war god is cruel? Trit-Nu sighed. No, he just likes to tease. I'm not quite in the mood. They came before a large tower with a silver fountain beneath it. Here the water flowed with a greenish hue, and Trit-Nu sat on the edge of the large water basin. He reached down and cupped some of the water in his hand. Drink, he said as he too drank. Valrin knelt, drinking as told. He suddenly felt the presence of voices in his head. He looked up. Trit-Nu did not seem to be bothered by anything, but Valrin could hear them just like they were standing next to him, yet he did not know the language. I heard I was requested here, did I not? The voice was unexpected. Valrin and Trit-Nu jumped at the same time. Valrin turned to look upon a man wearing a tall helm of silver, with black armor covering his chest and legs. In his hand was a chalice made of emerald. Kel, Trit-Nu bowed. I did not expect you. Yes, you did. You expected me. I expected me. Was dealing with a rather nasty storm coming across the northern portions of the glacial seas. He paused, looking down at Valrin. The man was at least 3 times his height, and Valrin wasn't sure what to say. Valrin, Stormborn of the glacial seas, purveyor of great calamity. I don't really get the need for titles, but that last one, I'd say, for a mortal, you know how to cause a stir. Kel, god of the north, Valrin said as he bowed. I serve Meridas, and I serve you as well. Oh, fish boy, yes. Fishy Meridas still owes me a duel. I haven't seen him in a few hundred years in a form other than a blabbering fish. Make a point to punch him in the gill when you see him again. Wait, don't do that. He's already not the happiest. Kel summoned a seat of black rock beside the fountain and refilled his chalice from the fountain. Souls, yum, he said. Souls? I'm drinking souls? Valrin choked. Now these are distilled down. They come from the prayers of loved ones for fallen warriors. Enjoy them. There's too much for me, and the sirens have all but left the shores of the green rivers. I was headed there after some sparring with Throka, but he seems to think we need a few hundred more spears. I'm not sure why. He's such a bore sometimes. What had started as a training session and continued to a strange fountain beneath the tower now had become a strange gathering between Valrin, Trit-Nu, and Kel. I wanted to tell you, Valrin, Stormborn of the glacial seas, purveyor of great calamity, that I very much enjoyed your attack on Marog following the death of Bry. Quite extraordinary, and in all seriousness now, I was honored by the actions of many that day. From Alera's husband, taking Marog head-on, to Bry brandishing the sword of my little sister and striking down the scourge siren. I don't get this. You talk as if we are sitting in a tavern waiting for dawn to go sailing. If all of this is so simple for you, why do you need me to destroy Marog? Could you not do it? Trit-Nu sat up. His eyes were wide, curious of how Kel would react to the rather careless words. Valrin knew what he'd asked, and he knew the chance of angering the god was there, but he didn't care. I'm not much for blasphemy, the god said. He pointed at Valrin. But I like your questions. They're honest and simple. Very good. The truth is, when we've gotten involved, I'd argue we caused more problems. There was a time when we walked regularly amongst the people, a time well before the great floods. when the people did not just pray to us, but came to us directly. I see a time where we will walk upon the world again, but it is far from now. Much evil is to come upon the world, beyond just Marog, but all evil had a corresponding good, a contrast to foulness in the deep places of the world. Kell summoned a silver chalice in his hand that appeared in a flash of flame. He set it beneath him on a small stool that appeared just a moment before he sat the chalice down. "You teased my friend," Kell said to Trit-Nu. "So be a good servant and grab a bottle of white blood, a good drink for the occasion. Ah, and how about some music?" Kell clapped his hands 3 times, and an assembly of floating nymphs began to play a melody on flutes. Valrin noticed the nymphs looked like elves, except they were red in color. Their breasts bounced in the air as they moved up and down almost with Kell's hand as he motioned up and down. "You see, I'd very much like to be done with this waiting," he said, drinking from his emerald chalice. "You tempt this god with war, to feel my blades driven into my enemies, to wrought destruction upon the world. But Throka says it is not time. Wura say it is not time. I wish it were time." He slammed his chalice into the ground, sending a flash of green fire across the ground. Valrin jumped up onto the edge of the fountain to escape the flames. "Throka! Spears!" Valrin moved behind Kell as the war god stomped over to the overlook above the entire fiery valley that was laid out from the fountain. "They say I'm angry. They say I cannot be contained. I see this not as a weakness, but as a strength. If I could, I'd be there with you, Valrin, standing tall with 1 foot on Taria and the other upon the mountains of the east." A stone bucket fell from the sky with several golden-tipped spears that sizzled in the air. Kell took one in hand. Rearing back, he threw the spear that became like a comet, streaking across the sky and striking a mountain in the distance, which exploded in rock and fire. "I'd stand with you, Stormborn, but we cannot. We cannot do what my sister does. Too many times she takes a stand. She goes upon the world. Soon, she will act and lose her status. That I fear. I fear it greatly. The only time we may go upon the world is but to stop the Itsu. Beyond that, we may lose our ability to protect the living realm from the true enemy, that being the Itsu. Misla and Marog are beyond us. That is your fight. It is why the gods have chosen to train you. You are the one and only who can face down what Elio inadvertently created. That is why we must trust in you as our followers trust in us." Valrin continued to stand on the edge of the fountain as the last of the wisp of fires went out. Kell returned to his seat as Trit-Nu appeared beside him with the bottle of white blood. Kell took the bottle from him, popping a bone cap off the top. Valrin believed it might have been an actual skull that was used to cork it, but the drink was poured into the silver chalice and quickly given back to Trit-Nu before he could discern it further. Kell offered the drink to Valrin. "Consider this my gift for a follower of Meridas, embracing his inner Kell. I cannot help you beyond this, but know you will have a zeal unlike before." Valrin took the chalice as Trit-Nu looked on. "White blood is a draught of will and strength, a potion, if I might say, created by the Brewery of Storms, the same place where storm clouds are crafted for your realm. It contains the potent elixir of Elhak, a drink that the gods and their chosen champions enjoy before battle. But I do not go into battle. Would this not be a waste?" Kell smiled, resting his face on top of his fists as he leaned down to stare at Valrin. "There are a few ways this ends, and all of them end in battle. Marog will not be bartered with. There will be no ceasefire. There will be him and you and the storms of old and new. That is it. Drink, for soon you will die, at least in the understandings of the gods." Valrin placed the chalice at his lips and drank. He expected that of blood, but did not taste it. Then, as the thick liquid coated his mouth, He expected something like wine. The flavor was like that of charred oak and honey, a liquor with a hint of spice. He coughed and belched a blue flame. "Yes!" Kel clapped. "His soul enjoys it. His body prepares. Trit-Nu, take him back to the ash grounds. He is prepared. Is that not why you brought him to the fountain?" "I was hoping to clear his mind," Trit-Nu said, "not have it clouded further. You're still such a poor loser. Do you not like the addition of Trit-Nu into your soul?" "He was a faithful warrior," Trit-Nu said. But Valrin noticed the voice was not Trit-Nu's, but a deeper one. "I only hope that I can train him to the level that is needed in time. The glacial seas are warming, the monsters of Wura, long sleeping, awaken. There is much trouble to come upon the lands." "He is the Stormborn. Those are his seas in the name of Meridaeus," Kel said. "He will be strong. He will rise and, like the lightning from a hurricane, be our champion upon his realm. Or he will die, and I will have my chance in the final moments of the realm." Kel began to laugh, lifting into the sky above Valrin and Trit-Nu, taking with him his dancing red women and their pipes. In a moment, they were alone. Trit-Nu sighed. "We return," he said plainly. The walk away from the fountain back down to the valley was solemn and silent. The air was different now, or perhaps it was just that Valrin felt different overall. He couldn't tell. As they left the stairwell and began onto the first bit of the ash fields, as they made their way back to the training grounds, Trit-Nu stopped. "That was not what I wanted for you. That was not part of your training." "I feel like it helped," Valrin said. "I feel much better." "But that's exactly my issue with it. I wanted to go there to clear your mind, to allow you to meditate. I did not go there for an intervention from a deity. He is spirited. He's a god. That's all he is. They are used to the quick fixes, the easy paths. He gave you a draft to make you stronger, but that will not save you in the thick of battle. I seek to cultivate your mind, to grow you as a person and as a spiritual being. What good is a temporary elevation into your courage if it is not followed by a true strength, a strong mind, and a keen blade? Is it not enough that he supports me? I'm not trying to be the best warrior in the living realm, just good enough to defeat Marog. If the gods who are normally not willing to help are helpful in some way, should we not take advantage of it?" Trit-Nu sighed. He coughed and then looked at Valrin with eyes that were not the eyes he normally had. His voice spoke in a deeper tone. "Valrin, I am a gathering of souls, warriors from the ages, those who have blessed the gods and cursed them, sought battle and sought peace through battle. I have both battle cries and the weeping of virgins sacrificed to appease the war gods of varied races, but all pray in truth to Kel. There is no quick fix to training, no way to increase your powers in a meaningful way. Dark lords rise and witches become queens, but in the end, it is a hero or heroine with a sharp mind who takes them down. The path to quick power is a path of desolation. I am trying to teach you different." Valrin understood what he said, and instead of walking forward further into the training area, he sat down, crossing his legs and concentrating his mind. "You will find that difficult after the gods drink." He closed his eyes, seeing an array of colors in his mind's eye, images flashing before him. "I have never seen someone meditate after drinking that. This should be interesting." Trit-Nu sat next to him as Valrin continued to try to quiet his mind. The colors and flashes continued. He saw streaks of stars passing before his eyes, and then he felt as if the ground were rumbling. He opened one eye, placing a hand on the ground just to be sure, but realized that the ground wasn't shaking. He saw fogs and dark water. He saw a sheer wall of stone, and then up and over the wall, he saw streets and buildings. They were tall, affixed with crystals. There was a central road between two large sections of buildings, and he followed up it, moving with haste like he was flying in a dream, but he was fully aware that he was in a vision. He floated up a large bridge that wrapped around a central large spire as he ascended the clouds. He had been to this place before. It was familiar to him. When at last he had reached the pinnacle of the city, he saw only a dark presence and a form staring at him. "How are you here?" It was Marog. Valrin's eyes sprung open, and he looked up to see Trit-Nu and, to his surprise, Kel. "Quite a ride you had," Kel said. "Never seen someone do that. I've seen a few people get decapitated jumping right into a battle, but you bring an entire new level of insane to my mind." "What happened?" Valrin asked. "You were shaking, screaming, and then you became as white as a pearl," Trit-Nu said. "Rolling energy poured from your body, and it was odd enough that Kel returned." Valrin sat up, breathing heavily. "I didn't feel like I was out that long. I had a vision. I think I saw Misla, at least, part of it. It is just like the Dwemer city of Eliaka. I went there before, when we went into the past. Eliur was from there, so it makes sense that his spirit would build Misla in its image. Marog knew I was there. I saw him, and he saw me." "Good," Trit-Nu said. "Then perhaps that is enough to know you are not defeated. Would not subterfuge be better?" Trit-Nu shook his head. "In some tactics you are correct, but Marog needs to be fearful. He needs to believe that he must calculate everything. Then, when he is busy planning out every aspect, looking for the absolute correct path, you will strike." "What of the Aela sunrise and the lost captain?" "That is the working of Radahala. I do not trust him, but in order to find Marog, you must find Misla. You are not an ethereal warrior, though the Dwemhar had them. You cannot attack him from within the realm of visions. You must go to the real Misla. So for now, keep your guard up and seek that of the lost captain." "Well, you are well," Kel said. "Our investment in you holds strong, so I will depart. Give my one ancient one a taste of your power." Kel vanished in a flash of fire, leaving Trit-Nu and Valrin. Trit-Nu crossed his arms. "Go on to the training grounds. I will summon her." Valrin walked onto the black sands, making a point to run toward the center. It took no time at all for Kelna to return, her smoke rolling over the ash fields. "Good Valrin. Thankfully I was able to find a snack in one of Kel's other realms in the meantime, but I'd still like a taste." She began to weave her tentacles around Valrin. "I don't think that'll be happening today. You'll have to go to another realm to get your fill." "Well, I will do that anyway. You're quite a morsel, to be sure, and I've got to eat more than your scrawny, salty self. It matters little. I believe you had some of Kel's brew? Quite a confident air about you. You must know that I have killed more of the confident than the cowering. It is fear that protects us. Courage is what you're going for, but you don't even fear me now, so you cannot have courage." Valrin closed his eyes, putting his hands together before him. He focused on the words of power in his mind. He felt Kelna immediately upon his mind, moving and weaving through his thoughts. He imagined her as the monster she was, moving through his mind, but as he recited the mantra from before, he severed her tendrils with a golden blade within his mind, forcing her to the edges. "Hamrasu!" he shouted. He opened his eyes to see Kelna retreating from him, hissing. He drew his blade, charging forward and leaping. "Hakenrak!" Thunder rumbled, and a bolt of lightning struck his blade before arching into the Ancient One, a stream of fire exploding from several tendrils as she stumbled backward, falling away. "Good, Valrin, good!" she hissed. She dug into the ground, burrowing and moving into the ash beneath his feet. Valrin guessed at where she was lifting his sword. "Hakenrak!" he said again. Lightning struck the ground, but simply threw up the ash. A moment later, the Ancient One exploded from the sand beneath him, her tendrils gripping his head and pulling him into the ash. His Dwemhar blade ignited, and he thrusted it into her. Nothing. He felt her upon his mind again, and he attempted to recite the mantra. But it was too late. She was already in his mind. He saw flashes of blackness and had the sensation he was falling. There was an explosion around him. He felt the searing heat of something that was not there before, a presence strong and beaming. Holravama! There was a deafening blast, a sound that sent his ears ringing. Vakkelna released her grasp, and he stumbled away, moving toward still sands, as it seemed all the sands around him were swirling. He stumbled, falling to his knees as he clawed his way away. He fell back, seeing an enveloping white orb and Trit-Nu with his spear driven into the Ancient One. Then it was dark. The fires in the mountains receded. Trit-Nu landed just near Valrin and offered him a hand. "That was not supposed to happen," he said. "What was that?" "The Ancient One fell to a similar attack, but you did not do it. Something consumed it suddenly, like an infection." Valrin looked over the crater and the remnant blackness that floated above it. "You killed her?" "No, I struck her with an advanced mantra, one you're not ready for. The darkness that took her is what remains. Now, we will speak to it. Stay behind me." Trit-Nu went to the black shroud. Valrin noticed tiny crystals, almost like chains of some kind, keeping the being still. "Who are you?" Trit-Nu asked. The blackness sizzled, but no words came from it. "You are in the realm of the northern god Kel. You will speak." "I am the end. I am the old." The blackness began to snap over and over, like fire crackling within a burning log. "I am everything. I am nothing." The blackness vanished. The crystals holding it dropped to the ground. Trit-Nu sighed, looking back at Valrin. A moment later, Kel appeared. "I felt it. I felt an Itsu demon. It possessed Vakkelna. No Itsu can come into my realm. How did this—" He paused, looking at Valrin. "There is a true darkness in you. It was not there before." "I'm not Itsu," Valrin said. "I have never even been to the southern seas, and we've never come across one that I know of." Kel nodded, stroking his chin. "Yes, but you have moved through time, a danger in and of itself to be sure. At some point the Itsu have come upon you, or one close to you, or—" He paused again. "Misla, what if Marog has channeled the Itsu? It is why the fogs are as they are." "Do you think Misla channels Itsu energy?" "Well, we know it isn't Dwemhar. There are not enough of them strong enough to do so. I will confer with the others. Keep on your path, Valrin. The gods of the north may yet stand beside you if it is deemed we must." Kel vanished in his fiery spell again. "If the Itsu help Marog, this has complicated everything further. We must not delay. You must continue on your path to gather what it is Radahala needs. The Saint of Dimn will help you further." Valrin felt himself lift off the ground, and in a snap, he was back sitting where he was before he used the ashes. The ocean was before him, and he felt the cold like never before. He thought of what he had seen, realizing that none of the others would understand it, or likely even believe it. "Hey!" a voice said behind him. He turned to see Aeveam. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing at all, but you and the Saint went away from the rest of us, and after I saw her and not you, I decided to find you. Are you okay?" He nodded. "Yes, just getting my thoughts straight." She smiled. "I understand. Well, there's quite a bit of food. Ordak and Nevron have already started eating. Milia went to sleep, and Evorn found some herbs that he's frankly going a bit insane over. He's quite excited." Valrin laughed. "Good. We need a bit more happiness around here." She stared at him for a moment, looking at his eyes and then scanning him up and down. "You look tired." He shrugged. "Well, I can't sleep. And if I could, I'm sure my dreams would not be the greatest." "Perhaps not, but there is a very good room here for meditation. I'll do it with you if you want after we eat. It might do you some good." He nodded. Let's join the others for now. And yes, he smiled, we can meditate. Going into what was a series of several small doors leading up to an equal number of 3-step stairwells, they came to the Hall of the Saint, a large room with high windows and a visible representation of the flowing winds moving across the upper portion of the ceilings. Every few moments, there was a low rumble beneath their feet. Valrin paused, having not felt that before, but Ordak shook his mug at him. It is nothing. Apparently this place absorbs some of the winds that wrap around our world. Nothing to worry about. The orc stumbled a bit as he walked, making his way back to a chair where Nevron, Alera, and Melia were sitting with mugs of their own. Beer, or so we've been told, Alera said. It's quite good. But the orc has had 8 glasses in the small amount of time you got lost. I needed a bit of time to myself, he told them. Time is good, Nevron said. Even went with the saint to the gardens, but we have food on the back wall. He motioned to a large table behind him. His stomach growled. Aeveam laughed at him and grabbed his arm. Come on, she said. The table had a varied assortment of fish and shelled snacks. There were many yellow and orange fruits and a bowl of something red. He took a mug and filled it from a small keg sitting on the edge of the table before going back to sit with the others. He took a seat and then looked up to see Ordak staring at him. Captain! Good, you're having a beer! Valrin stared at the greenish skin of the orc, his dilated pupils, and a small amount of drool on the corner of his mouth. Drink, drink, Captain. I will sing you a song. Come now, Ordak, Nevron said. I've suffered through an orc drinking song. Don't make the others wish to stab their ears. I'll have you know I was quite the entertainer in my younger years. I haven't always been such a brute. I used to make the half-orc ladies squirm in excitement. I do have quite the voice for an orc. Valrin raised a single eyebrow, eating a few pieces of the fish he had taken before taking a long drink of his beer. It was strong, much stronger than the ales Fadis had drunk as they'd made their way south to Taria many months ago. He thought for a moment of those times, the innocence of it all, when the only thing he had to worry about was the eventual coming of his time as Stormborn, something he'd felt was far from then. He took another chug of beer and sighed. Ordak tapped him on the shoulder. He looked toward him to see yet another beer. You drink, I sing. I will be lovely, I assure you. Valrin took the beer and sipped it. All the while, Ordak was staring at him with a slightly drunken gaze. Just don't strip, Melia said. I've seen that. I don't want to see it again from an orc. You have a horrid standard of orcs, Ordak said. Next, you'll say I'm going to pillage a village. Oh dear, Nevron said. He's rhyming. We're in for it now. He took another swig of his ale, nearly knocking it over as he set it down. Ye orc! He paused, lifting his hand. Ye orc maid, lusty maid, arguably one of the finest there is. Swig ye beer, drink ye beer, lick ye ear. He paused again. What were the words? He seemed to search his mind for a moment. For a moment, Valrin was confident the orc was about to pass out, but then he began again. Swig ye beer, drink ye beer, lick ye ear, eat the deer. That is what the half-orcs like. Wild parties at the midnight hour, with whiskey brew and limes of sour. We have not grace of elven hymn, or the pounding drums of dwarven song, but we can pound the night go long. We are Orkin, Lorkin, Gong. He began to dance, if one could call it that. He held up his hand and spun, grabbing another beer that of all people Alera had obtained for him. Swig your deer, drink the blood, throw the carcass on the fire, jumping jump, lumpy rump, days and fit for my desire. All orcs dream of place placed in the mountains hidden well. A solemnness solace signified so silent singing soaring swell. We could go to this hide, but we never can. Instead, we'll jump up and down, hopping on our drinking can. He paused, pointing at Valrin. "Captain, how dare you?" Valrin looked over to the others, who seemed as dazed and confused as he was of the ordeal. "You are not drinking." He chugged the last of his beer. "I tell you of the sacred hideout of the half-orcs, and you—" He opened his mouth, holding it for a while. "I feel a bit numb, I'd say." He coughed and then began to dance, much slower than before. "Swig your beer, drink. Yeah, ear." He paused again, his eyes rolling back into his head as he fell face forward with a thud in front of Valrin. "Gods be cursed," Aeveam said, holding several random leaves and herbs he had gathered and was flattening out as he walked toward them. "I leave you people, and you've gone and got the orc drunk. Never get the orc drunk." He looked over to Valrin. "I thought you had vanished for a bit. Good to see you back." Valrin noticed he was holding a staff now. "New?" Aeveam walked over to him, flipping the staff in his hands. The tip of it had an opening and a glowing red flame. "A staff of morning sunrise, a gift foreseen by the saint in her prayers, taken from her own collection. It seems in her time, before she was a saint, she was an enchanter of objects. It is good to have a staff again. It shall help us light our way through the mists and lash out at whatever hides within it." He looked down at Ordak as he began to snore. "I'll have some food, and then tend to him." At this point, the saint returned to them. "I trust the food and drink are well." "Indeed," Valrin said. "Thank you." "Do not worry of cleaning anything. Eat and drink and then sleep in the common room down this way." She motioned with her hand. "You will be protected here. Time itself is slower here, and that is an advantage of being in my home. I have given Aeveam a staff, but I prepare other items to further help you. The gods of the north bless you." Ordak snored loudly and snorted. "He's fine," Nevron said. The saint smiled. "I'm sure. The brew is a sacred one, used for blessing sacraments, but I knew it would be enjoyed by the crew of the Ayla Sunrise. If ever a blessing was needed, it was on you. I go to pray, but if needed, please seek me out." She departed. "Orc home? A sacred place?" Milia asked. "What was Ordak talking about?" Nevron shrugged. "I have never heard of a place like that." Aeveam had a bowl of the red substance that Valrin had not taken because he wasn't sure of what it was. "He speaks of a place desired by half-orcs, a place to call their own, a dream, as I believe it." He slurped the bowl, leaving an obvious red residue on his lips. "What is that?" Valrin asked. "Blood." He slurped again. "Quite delicious. It's good for your muscles," he said, taking a third sip. "I think I'm going to be sick," Milia said. Valrin chuckled and finished his second drink. Aeveam set down his bowl and took out several herbs, roots, and flower petals. He began to chop at them with a small knife, adding several ingredients to a bowl before taking a bit more of the blood he was drinking before and mixing the mixture together. In a few moments of mixing, he made a paste that he took on a single finger and placed on Ordak's upper lip. "That'll do it. It'll reverse the orc's happy drinking and even deal with the headache. Quite a mixture. Used to use it to combat other poisons one might consume. When I was a younger elf of around 200 years, I spent time eating mushrooms while sitting on the beach. Quite the experience, I must say." Aeveam grinned, gathering his many herbs and leaves back up. "I have more work to do in the garden. The saint has given me new vials, and I'll actually be able to create some mixtures I haven't been able to since leaving the Shadowlands. It is good we came here. Oh, before I retire to my work, I want to go get something." Aeveam vanished, leaving them. Milia was talking now with Aeveam. "Has he ever eaten a person?" she asked her. "Not that I know of, not with us. I've heard shadow elves were cannibals, and I've always considered myself fortunate to not know if that was true or not." "It is true," Nevron said. "I have seen it myself. but I think it is rarer. There is more of a divide in their culture than there used to be. Those like Aeveam worship the silent gods, those aligned with shadow. The blood gods were the ones who demanded the eating of flesh, but to be truthful, their religion is as confusing as any in my mind. We on the Isles do not care one way or another.
Have you thought about that?
Alara asked. What exactly? My mind has not stopped for some time.
How we can retake our lands?
The mists make things difficult, but I sent one of our dragons to try to draw out those dragons that are not under the influence of the supposed king there now. I am hoping we can pull as many of our friends from there as we can. When all this is done, I will take back my throne. That is my plan.
You're a king?
Milia asked.
Deposed, but yes, still the king. It does all tie back, Valrin said. Misla, Marog, those who took your throne. If we defeat him, perhaps that which has taken your kingdom will fall away, considering its allegiance to Marog.
I can hope so, Nevron said, though I don't know what it is exactly. I do not think it a mere man who holds my kingdom hostage. I think it is a spirit, an entity. Fogs veil more than just our sight, Aeveam said. Even my meditations have become difficult. I have heard of this Eye of Storms. It allows the user to pierce through many veils, both natural and unnatural, or so the legends speak. Valrin poured a glass of water from a pitcher on the table. It is not something just of the lost captain? It is not. At least I do not think it is. I believe it is a sacrament of the northern gods, a device once used to peer into the heart of the rival gods before the fall of the Itsu. Itsu, Nevron said. A name I have not heard in some time. It was my people who were flooded in the War of the Gods, when the southern lands fell and became the southern seas. We have songs that lament that time, though it is said the southern gods were not all Itsu, that some stood against them. There was talk of the inner world, great pillars of power that ran down deep into the recesses of our lands, deeper than even dwarves delve. It is there, at least in some beliefs, that the creator of all, the great poet, sleeps. In later stories, he or she was known as the birth dragon, a form that created all life and then slept. Nevron poured himself more wine and then lay back in his chair. Aeveam returned with several large glowing leaves. He handed one to each of those present. Valrin's went dark in a few moments. In fact, it was before Aeveam had even handed Aeveam one. Aeveam turned and stared at him. "What?" Valrin asked. Aeveam took back the leaf, and it began to glow again. He handed it back to him, and it darkened. "This is Avarice Leaf," Aeveam said, "a purification herb." As the leaf's glow dimmed again, Valrin tossed it on the ground. "Not a question I have or care to have answered, Aeveam." He walked away before anyone could say anything. He knew he had a darkness upon him, something beyond that of a flower or herb could possibly chase away. He didn't need anyone to point it out, yet he knew that Aeveam's intention was not that. He turned back to see Aeveam walking away. Nevron, Alara, and Milia were all leaving too. Only Aeveam remained. He sighed, walking back toward her. "You're not what you think," Aeveam said. "I know what that looked like." "Then is there something on my hands that causes the plant to darken? Something in the plant? Or is it something in me? Something that has been there since Marog and I fought? Since Bry died?" He sat down at the table, hearing the sounds of the wind horns on the outer parts of the temple. "I'm not what I was, Aeveam. I'm not the kid I was. I'm not the captain I was. I am something else. Something does brood in me, and I do not know if I have the strength to push it away. If even in the presence of a saint within a temple of a northern god, this presence is still upon me, I'm afraid of what is to come. Come on, Valrin, let's meditate. Let's try to figure this out." Going upstairs, they left the others to do their own things as the saint began her prayers on the outer balcony. Aeveam led him forward, up the stairwell to a large atrium with many glowing flowers. This had been where Aeveam had vanished to mid-dinner and returned with the glowing petals. She told him to take anything he needed, but I think he'll end up clearing her out of all her flowers and herbs, Aeveam told him. Valrin noticed that there were more than a few clipped plants here and there, and with only sleep slowing Aeveam down, he figured she might be right. They came to a large fountain, not too unlike the one he had seen when in the god's realm with Trit-Nu, except there were no nude nymphs or volcanic mountains in the distance. The sky above them, visible through skylights above, were bright and clear. Much clearer than they had been at any time in the recent weeks upon the glacial seas. There was a small area beside the fountain with several candles on stone pedestals. Aeveam bowed before a small statue of Dimn and then sat cross-legged beside the fountain. Valrin did the same and joined her. His actions felt hollow to him, like he was going through the motions just to do so, to please some otherworldly being who watched silently by seeing his actions alone. Aeveam grabbed his hand. I will journey with you wherever your mind takes you as you meditate. My spirit is quiet. My aura is strong. I need to see what haunts you. Valrin closed his hand around hers. Then, closing his eyes, he began to concentrate on his breathing. As he took in a breath, he imagined himself as he was, sitting with Aeveam. He saw the breath go into his nostrils and down into his chest. Then, back out. He began to feel the energy inside of him, the undulating forces rolling like a fire between his forehead and his stomach. Your energies are alive, she told him. I can feel energy like I rarely have before. He focused, seeing a great storm on the edge of enveloping mists. There was lightning in the mists, yellow and gold. Within the mists, he saw a shadow moving, but could not make them out. The storm blew up from the ocean, meeting the mists, and upon the dark storm clouds touching the mists and fogs, there was a loud thunderclap. Your mind fights that which swarms you. Your mind does not back down, though. I see you below this, and all you feel are the shadows of both the storm and Misla. You're not alone. There was another thunderclap. You are not alone. Another thunderclap. Alone. You will be in the end. A darkness comes. This wasn't Aeveam's voice. You were alone then. You will be alone in the end. Those around you shall die, but it will not be by my hand alone, but yours. He could hear a blaring horn and could see the mists blowing around the great dark storm. Lightning struck out from the storm, blue and undulating between light and dark, but striking out and grasping the golden lightning of the fogs and mists. There was another thunderclap. This one caused Valrin to open his eyes. Aeveam was floating beside him, but then the entire structure shook. She fell to the ground and struggled to stand. Something is happening, she said. Part 4. Revelations. Valrin and Aeveam hurried downstairs to find the doors to the temple sprung open. The winds were gusting through the halls, and the saint floated down, shutting the door from afar with a wave of her hand. Something ripples within my protection. I am sorry. There is darkness within you. She pointed at Valrin. Weakness centers around you, Stormborn, and I cannot protect this place. An avalanche of rock came down suddenly within the hall, and Aeveam caught the stones, tossing them aside. I am sorry, Valrin said to the saint. This is my fault. Aeveam, get the others. We have to go. Aeveam hurried down the hall. The saint embraced Valrin. There is little time left. I must give you what you came for. She led him toward a door that he had not seen before. He didn't think it had even been there before, but as he was led into a thin chamber of white stone with silver running up its center, he felt a rush of wind around him as they moved upward. I take you to the spire, the place of the seeing glass, and the place where I hold that of the lost captain. She pulled him through another door, and they emerged on the outside of the temple. From here, they were high above the rest of the temple. She took him down a narrow walkway to which he could see either side at once. He stopped, peering over the side for a moment, and could see the mists rolling upon the area near the Sand Cow and Radahala. There were flashes down there. Ahead, he could see the rolling clouds violently shifting around the ward of the saint. Dimn has spoken to me in prayer. My salvation comes to its end. I must give this to you. You must see what it is, and you must move quickly to the edge of our world. The torn parchment and the intervention of the gods, it all waits for you, Stormborn. The saint led him to a smaller tower with a large crystal at its tip. Here, there was a large glass object, gilded and gold. Below it on a pedestal was a tiny box with weathered leather and a single buckle holding it close. The saint motioned for him to go to the large glass object. It was like a giant eye of glass. She pointed at it. Look within at what is hidden. Please, do so. He obliged, leaning down and looking through the glass. He saw at first the turbulent winds, the hands of Dimn, as it were, protecting the temple itself. But further, he saw through the fogs and spotted chaos in the twisting fogs. Blackness and whiteness together, like two distinct forces combining as one. He saw the rocks of what seemed a mountain of sorts, surging through the clouds as if a ship at sea. Beneath it, upon the sea, there were tentacled monsters and ships innumerable. He pulled away from the looking-glass to see the saint holding a black looking-glass. The lost captain was blessed with the sacrament of old. He wielded this for his time, but it is now yours. Once you know the way to Misla, this will be of great use to you. Misla cannot be journeyed to without the map. That is the next stage. But as it seems, Misla moves quickly, and though your coming here was not of the plans of your guide, Radahala, it was the will of the gods. Something thundered below them. The dragons Rornuk and Nura roared beneath them. We must return to the others. We must all go, including you. He pulled the saint back toward the tower, and they shot downward, coming into the hall again. Elara was upon Rornuk, standing in a collapsed portion of the wall. Valrin, that flying vessel is back. It drops off strange orbs. She tossed a silver orb to him that he expected to be heavier, but it was not. The saint placed her hands on it, but then jerked back. This is something beyond us all. You must go, Valrin, now. She began to glow white. I summon Dimm's winds. Shield this place. Give the Stormborn passage. All shall submit to the glory of Marog. Valrin drew his blade as Melia and Ordak came running from the opposite part of the hall. We tossed one of those blasted silver orbs into the sea, Ordak said. It draws fog in. Pretty sure it's not good. Aeveam shouted, flying backward from an area Valrin could not see from where they were standing. He ran toward the shadow elf, sliding to pull him up. Rossi was out and hissing toward a bright line shining in a fractured part of the temple. There was what looked like a fire burning there. Several forms emerged from the fire, and Valrin held out his blade. In the name of Meridaeus and Dimn, flee this temple. Do not cross into the sacred space of this temple. Aeveam summoned her spells around herself as Melia, Ordak, and Aeveam took up position beside him. All shall submit, one of the figures said calmly. Marog does not ask, for he brings about the destruction to come. The glory of the old returns in both the echoes of the Dwemhar who were and in the clamor of the gods who were cast aside. The old cannot stand against the new. Valrin felt a bubbling anger within him. He brought his sword back. Hakenrak! He used the word of power, sending a bolt of lightning streaking toward one of the figures, who took the blast, but then shriveled down into the floor of the temple, shaking. The two other figures leaped forward, but Aeveam caught the first one, slamming them against the far edge of the temple. The other one was caught up in Aeveam's vines, which appeared more like fire than vines like before. The burning fire began to glow brighter. "Pawns, mere pawns," the fire said. A massive form began to emerge from the fire, a beast unlike anything any of them had ever seen. "Evorn?" Valrin asked. "I don't know. I have never seen something that looked like this." Winds shot around them, blowing through the growing flames and pushing them back. The saint touched Valrin on the shoulder. Her form was no longer the beautiful form she appeared as before. "Go. This is the fight of those you will help in the future, but I have secured the winds in the name of my god. Go now, Stormborn." The beasts burst through the winds, its gaping maw snapping at the saint, who flew upon it, knocking it across the temple. More of the beasts were emerging. "Captain, let's not piss off the good lady. Come on," Ordak shouted. He had already begun towards the door. Valrin felt for the Eye of Storms, looking back at the saint, who was now being thrown between the original being that came from the fires and several other smaller ones. The doors of the temple were broken, and all around them the stones rolled off the upper portions of the temple.